Welcome to another episode of SloPocSports. My name is Charles Sommer, and with me is Stephan Hodges. How you doing, Stephan?
Doing pretty good, Charles. We're at the very creatively named San Luis Obispo Baseball Stadium, where, I spent a lot of time as a kid, and one of the nice things about here, this might sound as a negative, but it hasn't been upgraded in a long time. It's exactly as I remember it. I mean, it's probably been 12 years since I first sold tickets here, but, you look around and everything's exactly the same as I remember it. And it's just really a nice feeling that there's some things in life that don't change, one of which is this stadium will never be upgraded from the looks of it.
I've been here a few times working with the Pilots and the Packers in the past. And if you don't know the Pilots or the Packers, the Santa Maria Valley baseball teams, Pilots are no longer in existence as the Packers sort of just absorbed them, and it's just one team from the Santa Maria area. There's also the Reds, but the Santa Maria Valley Packers is sort of why we're here today, because the head coach, Jim Allen, is going to sit down with us, and we'll do an interview sort of previewing their season, although they're 2 games in, here in their 4-game series against the San Luis Obispo Blues.
Yeah, and it's really a good time to be picking up semi-pro baseball if you haven't watched any of it in the past. As local sports are kind of winding down outside of your local semi-pro teams. I mean, the Blues are playing, and that's always the thing to do in St. Louis if you want to see baseball. They're the only thing close to a pro team we got, so that's why we're here.
Yeah, and speaking of things winding down, most of everybody's athletic seasons are over except for a few. We're going to start with some track and field, because there's some kids in the area that are still in track and field, even though CIF is done and Masters is done. There's still CIF State, and there's still some kids in the running for state. And I just want to start with your alma mater, San Luis Obispo.
Right.
Callum Bolger, who is a long-distance runner for San Luis Obispo. He's a senior. He is a CIF Division III champion in the 3200, also known as the 2-mile, at 9:03:24, and he's got a pretty big race coming up against another young man. In fact, there's actually 4 young men that are within 2 seconds, or just over 2 seconds of each other. The number 1 seed has a 9:01:48. He's the number 2 with 9:03:24, and the number 4 seed is 9:03:77. So they're all within just a couple seconds together. And when you talk about short distance, obviously the 100, 2-3 seconds is a huge deal.
I mean, 100, 2-3 seconds is the difference between training and not training at all, Charles.
Yes. So, but when you're talking about the 3200, that's a matter of who's finishing strongest in that last lap.
I mean, and those little bits of differences, like you can sit there and say, oh, it's, 2 seconds. 2 seconds can be huge when it comes to a, 2-mile race even. You're still talking about, people that are spending all year refining their craft, and 2 seconds is a long time. I mean, if it doesn't sound like it, sit and watch someone cross a finish line and then count to 2 and see how much further they've gotten. It's big.
It is quite the distance, but, in a long-distance race, a lot can be made up in those 8 laps that you do.
A lot more focus is required in long-distance races.
Another athlete from San Luis Obispo is Anneke Mordorf, and I'm not sure if I'm even saying that correctly. She does the triple jump, and she's ranked in the top 10 with a 40-foot, 2.25-inch jump. And so there's a pair of kids from San Luis Obispo that were going to state. They did have 3 CIF championships individuals, but they are only sending 2 to state. And then there's the Paso Robles with the boys 1600, Trad Birdie, who has a 4:12.74, who's just over 2 seconds behind the number 1 seed at 4:10.61. So it's nice to see some of these kids in those individual events moving all the way to the state level.
Well, in San Luis Obispo County, and San Luis Obispo in particular, has always been a hot spot for track and field. I mean, something I don't think we mentioned on the broadcast, but Jordan Hesse from Mission Prep set the record for the American woman at the Boston Marathon. She's probably going to be going to the Olympics this upcoming, round for the women's marathon. So there's a lot going on as far as, track and field and athletics go in the Central Coast, in particular, San Luis Obispo County.
And staying on the local side, away from track and field, there's baseball and softball still going on. Rigetti is in their respective division. They'll be in the semifinal on Tuesday, and also Santa Maria. And on the softball side, where I will be on Tuesday, is San Ynez High School, who hasn't seen the playoffs in many years and is primed to sort of move all the way to the final if they can win on Tuesday.
Yeah, and San Ynez really, with the new announcement of their athletic director, I mean, this is a great time for him to be coming in as that, entire athletics program starting to heat up. And, we're at the point where we can kind of look back, and you mentioned Rigetti. What a great year it's been for Rigetti athletics. Outside of their football team, just about everyone's found success in their own right. I mean, it's been a great year for the Warriors. So I think that, obviously I'm cheering for all these teams to go forward, but you really got to feel good for, teams like San Ynez and Rigetti in particular, because they're really doing punching above their weight.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about sort of the Division III baseball is that not only is Rigetti in it, but Paso Robles is in it still too, and they're on opposite sides of the bracket. So they're both on the road. Paso Robles is at Walnut, while Rigetti's at Paraclete. They have a chance to meet each other in the final.
Yeah, and that'd be absolutely fantastic. It'd only be about an hour drive for whichever one ends up on the road. So it's always fun when you can see these Pac-7 rivalries kind of manifest in the playoffs.
Well, one of the things about the finals is they don't always do it at one of the team's stadiums. They actually will do it all the way down south. Now, this is something where both schools can say, hey, we don't want to travel all the way down to Riverside or Angel Stadium to play a baseball game. We want to do it in our own backyard. Let us host it at Cal Poly.
I think Cal Poly would be the ideal location for that, but I could also see them just hosting it at one of their stadiums because they don't want to go all the way down south. It can be real hard to book with a major university on short notice like this, and so I could definitely see one or the other trying to host at home. Especially I see Paso as if this was a civil war, they'd be the South Carolina of this secession. They're the ones that have their heels dug in the hardest against the southern section. So I could definitely see them saying, we're not playing this game if we got to travel 4 hours to go to some stadium where our fans can't get to.
Yeah, and Santa Maria has done exceptionally well. In the first round, they beat Dunn, so a nice local matchup, 13-4. They beat Foothill Tech 4-2. And that was at home, and then they hosted another home game. They beat Big Bear 16-4, and they have a semifinal matchup with Southlands Christian coming up on Tuesday. So that again is another huge game. And on the other side of the bracket is Malibu Moreno Valley. And again, these teams usually meet up down south at UC Riverside. Yeah. And that was the last championship game I went to. Lompoc played Oak Hill. Coach Allen was the coach of that team. It's the farthest he had gone. And they ended up losing 4-3, allowing 300 runs in the game. It was a tough game to watch.
Yeah, you never want to see a game get, won on an error or, in this case, 3 errors. So definitely a situation where you want to see the best players play their best baseball. That's the entire point of playoffs is that you got the best doing their best. And so I definitely think that's a case for not traveling down to UC Riverside or Angel Stadium for these players is, keeping that travel fatigue out of, wearing them down on the road over.
Yeah, and on the softball side, San Ynez, like we said, is still in it now. And I'm not trying to downplay their ability to play softball, but one of the things with competitive equity is you no longer have leagues set in a certain division. Each team is in their own division. And just like water polo, San Ynez is in Division 7, just as their water polo was in their water polo match. They won in overtime their girls water polo, and so they already have a CIF championship there this season, and it'll be really nice to see the girls sports at San Ynez actually make it all the way to the final and possibly win another championship.
And after San Ynez got bit the hardest at the start with competitive equity by missing the playoffs with their football team that went 8-2, competitive equity has really worked out in their favor as they're not being stuck in these higher divisions where they don't really, have a population base to compete. I mean, they're really doing well when they're down in these Division 7s, and you don't want to say, this is where they deserve to be, but, that's where they're finding success.
Well, and I will say that they probably would find success in a higher division because if you look at the scores that they've had already, they've played Coast Union, they won 13-0. They played Academy 19-7, and then they beat Connolly 18-1. So
they're crushing people. That's what I'm saying. Is I don't want to say, imply that that's where they deserve to be, but they're definitely winning when they're put up against whoever they're put up against. And that's what you want to see from a competitive group.
Yeah, and I'll say on the other side of the bracket, as a Village Christian, is a team that had you listen to the baseball broadcast that I had done early in the year with Lompoc. We did a playoff game against La Cañada, and it was a first-year head coach there who had previously coached with Village Christian, who had played Lompoc 3 times in the last 5 years in the playoffs. So there's that familiarity of sort of Village Christian, the school, playing some of these teams up north. They won their first round game 20-1, then 11-0, then 17-0. So it looks like these two teams are on a crash course towards each other, and someone's going to give.
I mean, when you have successful programs like this, it always seems weird that you keep facing each other in the playoffs, and it's just luck of the draw that, Valley Christian and Lompoc are on collision course again just because they both find themselves deep runs in the playoffs again, and there's only so many teams to play when you make a deep run.
Well, I wouldn't say Lompoc, but sort of the Central Coast area.
Central Coast, excuse me.
But, of course, San Ynez does have to get through Santa Rosa Academy on Tuesday, where you'll be able to follow us on Twitter. I'll have some video, and then we'll do a special interview afterwards, which will be a sort of an interview podcast only. I'll be talking to the new athletic director, Chris Avery, who's taken over for Ken Fredrickson, who's been there for 19 years and has seen so much success through all of his programs. I bid him a farewell. He was a really nice guy, but after having a phone conversation with Chris, it's not going to skip a beat. I can just tell by the energy he has, and he's been around Ken for years as a teacher at the school.
Yeah, and it's always tough when you're changing athletic directors just because when you're an athletic director, your goal is the long term. Your goal is, 5 years down the road, and so when you have someone new come in, they've really got to align their views fast, find out what's working and not working, because problems won't always pop up the day that you take over. So it's definitely a very fragile situation when he walks in, and as long as he keeps that energy and keeps the positivity, a lot of good things will come.
That'll do it for sort of our local portion. I hope that everyone continue following some of these things. You know what? I feel bad because I forgot one kid on there, and it was Haley Batty for Cabrillo High School. Is qualified for state. She's the 9th seed out of the Masters. She's a Division III champion in the girls' long jump with 18:10.75. It's not her PR, so she has a chance to probably break the top 5. But there's a girl out of the Division II of the Southern section who jumped well over 20 feet, and she's probably going to win state.
Coming up here next, we got the head coach of the Packers, Coach Allen. He's also been a long-time coach at Lompoc. We might talk a little bit about that. And, he's going to be here right before his game. Real generous of him to come in.
With us is the head coach of the Santa Maria Valley Packers baseball team, Coach Jim Allen. How you doing, Jim?
Doing good, thanks.
Thanks for joining our SloPocSports program. We really appreciate it. I know you're for Game 3 of the season against the San Luis Obispo Blues. How'd you get involved with the Santa Maria Valley Packers?
I started coaching back when we were doing the Santa Maria Indians, and then the Packers opened up, and so we went over, myself, Scott Nixon, Terry Newby, Bryn Smith. We all went over, started the Packers up, just give local kids a chance to play.
And on that, I feel like there's a lot of misconception about what semi-pro baseball really is on the Central Coast. Who can play, what kind of players are they, and what's kind of the goal?
Well, now it's mostly a collegiate summer league, which makes it a little bit different. We do have guys anywhere from just graduated college to we still have some high school guys that are playing for us. So it's a wide range of guys. We try and get some of the better talent in the area and get them an opportunity to play in the summer, get some games under their belt.
So you play, most of your games at John Osborne Field over at Allen Hancock College. How does that do with recruiting? I know that I look down the roster, I see a lot of either current or former Hancock players and potential future Hancock players. Is there any other draw that you get from other than this area?
We have some guys from out of the area, some guys from up north, up in the San Francisco area up there. We get some guys that have played, all throughout the United States in terms of where they went to school at, but we try and make it as local as possible and make sure. Hancock's a beautiful facility. I don't know anyone that wouldn't want to play there.
Oh, it's a beautiful field. I know that Coach Chris Stevens does a wonderful job making sure it's kept as pristine as possible. And ever since they moved across the street, I really enjoy working those games. Steve and I have both been with Hancock for a number of years, and we appreciate Steven's coaching style and his attention to detail when it comes to the playing surface itself. When you travel around, you don't have a lot of traveling you're going to do this year. You're coming here to the San Luis Obispo Baseball Stadium at Sinsheimer Park, and then you go to Elks Field. Is the travel sort of something you guys aren't really interested in, or is it just trying to keep it local?
We try and stay as local as possible, and give the kids a great place to play. Like we talked about before, Hancock is a tremendous facility. It's a great place for families to come watch games as well. Nice, clean atmosphere. The travel, you try and minimize as much as possible. These guys are, high school, college-age kids. It gets tough for them with the long summer having to drive wherever it is that we're going to play. Well,
I've always really enjoyed being part of the Packers in the past, and I did a public address and has worked with Scott Nickerson. Do you have a long relationship with Scott Nickerson? What is it that drives him to sort of continue this summer baseball program?
Scott's a great baseball man, and he does so much for the kids. He works tirelessly. Make sure that this roster's put together, make sure we got full schedule ready to go. It's hard in the summer. There's a lot of teams that come in one year, they're gone the next year. We've been able to keep this pretty consistent for a good number of years and be able to play good quality competition. Scott always does a great job with that, and again, his attention to detail is beyond refute. There's not a guy that has more attention to detail than he does.
Well, you talk about the history, history of the Santa Maria teams and all that. How long have you been with the Packers?
I've been with the Packers since their inception. Year one when we came in, we coached the Indians for a little while. I played on the Indians myself. Scott played for the Indians, coached the Indians, and now with the Packers, Terry Newby's done the same thing. Brent Smith did it when he was with us. So, there's a lot of local connections in terms of that, and it's great for these kids. An opportunity to come out and showcase yourself against some of the better talent.
Well, we have your schedule here, and we'll be sure to post the schedule on social media and any other outlet we have possible so that people can come to the games. And, of course, you play all your games at John Osborne Field, and that's at Allen Hancock College. I think it's 800 South College.
Yeah, 800 South College Avenue. And I got to say, if you're looking for, sports, it's the one thing that you can do on the Central Coast once summer rolls around, and it's a fantastic thing. It's not a bad option. It's not just because it's the only option. Take your family out, go watch a ball game. It's always a joy.
Oh, we love to have the families out there, love to have the kids out there running around, playing catch on the outside, just enjoying the game of baseball. It's about 2.5 to 3 hours of, just being able to come out and enjoy your family a little bit, watch a little baseball, and watch some of the local kids play and compete.
Yeah, and if you're not doing anything this next weekend on the 3rd and 4th of June, the Packers will be taking on the East Los Angeles Dodgers, a doubleheader on Saturday at 1 and 4, and then a noon game on Sunday. Jim, I really appreciate you coming on the program and letting us do this interview. We wish you luck on the summer season here, and hopefully we'll talk to you again in the future.
All right, thanks. Anytime. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
Right now on the SloPocSports program, we have the brand new head basketball coach for the boys team at Lompoc High School, Paul Terrones. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure you're very excited in this new venture at Lompoc High School. You've been a football coach on the defensive side for years. You went to Lompoc High School. We just happened to graduate high school together. How does it feel to take on a head coaching position at Lompoc High School?
Oh, I'm super excited for the opportunity. Just a chance to kind of lead young men into the future, try and win some basketball games at the same time. But I'm just really excited for the opportunity. I can't wait to, see what the season has in store. We've already started a little summer ball, but, that's nothing compared to what the season's going to be like. So just, like I said, really excited for the opportunity, and hopefully we can do something positive with it.
So a lot of people kind of look at coaching and see coaching as coaching, but, it's so much two different leagues. What kind of challenges have you seen now that you're a head coach compared to the amount of time that you've been as an assistant coach?
Oh, just when you're an assistant coach, you can really just coach, and there's nothing else involved. And I've already, dealing with trying to get in summer leagues and stuff, you deal with just the admin part of trying to get the paperwork done for the checks so we can pay the schools that we're going to play a summer league in, or trying to take care of uniform orders and things like that. And it's a lot more time consuming than I anticipated. Finding out just what we have, kind of an inventory list, that's taken a little bit of time to find out what we need to order. Trying to find out what kind of equipment is going to be necessary to help us be successful, and then trying to see how we're going to raise the money for that. I expected it, but it's been a little more than I expected. So just trying to adjust to that and still during practice time focus on the coaching part. Hopefully, we have we have right now 2 assistants that are locked in. And if we can get a couple more that can coach, I can just kind of almost let those guys go when we get in the gym. And, I can do my part and they can do their part. And then, when we leave the gym, I can take care of all that other stuff. And those guys can kind of do what I used to do. I can kind of pass that along and say, all right, just go coach.
Rumor has it you already have a pretty good mentor when it comes to coaching Lompoc basketball in the head position. Has she given you any? Of course, we're speaking of Claudia Terrones, your wife. Has she given you any advice on what to kind of do to get into the flow of things?
Oh yeah, she just kind of said, remember what's helped us be successful in the girls program. Just always kind of staying consistent and staying fair and holding the kids accountable. And they don't care until they really know that you care. And so just kind of always show them that love. We got to be disciplined. It's just like having kids. Got to be disciplined and you got to be firm. And at the same time, you got to kind of give them a hug and give them a pat on the back when they need it. So that's been the biggest thing from her. Her biggest thing is, we don't care about seeing you girls run around on the court. We want to see you walk across that stage in Houck Stadium. And so she's mentioned a few times, keep in mind that higher goal. Of course, I want to see you win games, but you got bigger things to accomplish besides that, so don't lose focus of that.
Speaking of graduating athletes, watching them walk across that stage, the last 2 years in Northern Santa Barbara County Athletic Roundtable, both male and female athletes of the year came from Lompoc, with Riley Sager and Tori Sims last year to Isaac Costa and Cheyenne Marmolejo, which both girls happen to be phenomenal basketball players for your wife, Claudia. How do you draw from these athletes who play other sports to come and play basketball? I'm sure it's a little easier given that you're an assistant football coach to get some of the football players, but getting some of the other guys who might run cross country or play water polo or, do baseball in the spring, how do you get those guys to come and buy into your program and come to practice?
I think the biggest thing is just going to be word of mouth. Kids are going to really enjoy being a part of the program, and hopefully they'll just kind of spread the word and tell their friends, like, come on out, come check it out and see what we're doing. Hopefully we can put some stuff out there kind of to the public to let people know what our program is about once we start, getting in the community, and because I'm going to be big on community service and just making sure all the kids are involved, not just a certain couple that want to put something on their college resume. Mm-hmm. I want the whole team to be involved in that stuff, and so hopefully we can get stuff out to the community that they see that Lompoc basketball is a program I want to be a part of.
Well, I see that's probably influence from Claudia as well, because she has her girls go out and go to the Boys and Girls Club and coach youth basketball teams and be quality members of the community, doing community service and mentoring even younger children than themselves, just as you and your wife mentor your athletes. I look forward to what you kind of come up with your community outreach and everything else.
Something that's really been a bit of a talking point recently has been the amount that Lompoc boys basketball kind of underperformed concerning the athleticism on the court. Coming in as a head coach, how do you plan to use those athletes at your disposal?
Well, I think they had some hard luck last year with injuries, and asking young guys to step up and play such a huge role. It's going to be really helpful for this year because they're going to have that experience behind them. But it was just a tough situation the last year. My plan for using the athleticism is we want to try to run. I told the kids day one of my one of my talking points in my meeting was, if we don't have to set up an offense, that's my ultimate goal, that we just run. We play defense, we outlet, and we go. We play defense, we steal, and we go. If we never have to set up an offense, that'd be kind of the perfect basketball game for us. Because we do have so many kids that we got to share in multi-sports. We don't have them year-round to kind of really develop a system with them. We have a chunk of kids that we can have year-round. But, if they all know the system and then we try to insert 2 football players and they don't know the system, then things aren't going to mesh real well. So we're going to try and let them be free on the court, not give them too much to think about, and just let them use their athletic ability. We'll give them the fundamentals of the game to be successful and try to use that ability, like you said, to run teams around and hopefully win the game in the fourth quarter is the ultimate plan.
At the end of the year, going into your first year, where your goals kind of set at the end of the year, what would make you most happy as a coach if your team is able to accomplish it?
I think, number one, you just want to get better. You want to see an improvement, obviously, but I'm not real big on moral victories. Not real big on the moral victories, but, as a coach, you got to kind of keep that in mind. I look up at the league champions every day in practice, and I see that the last one is 2007, and my goal is to get a year up there sooner rather than later. If we can do that this year, that would be awesome. But ultimately, if we can just see an improvement, not just in their basketball skills, but in their attitudes, in their effort, their classiness, just overall, I want anybody that sees a Lompoc basketball player to look at us with a positive point of view. Not that necessarily anybody looks at it as a negative point of view, but I think it's just kind of neutral right now. So that's kind of the end game, is to just improve every day at everything, every little thing that we do, all the details. If we want to put numbers in, I think a good goal I remember from my days at Redlands where I played football, our first goal every year was, let's just win more than we lose. And then from there we built up to the conference championship, making the national playoffs, and et cetera. So I think I'm going to try to carry that over. Let's start by just making sure we win more than we lose, because at the end of the day, I want them to win at everything. I want them to win at being students. I want them to win at being brothers. I want them to win at being sons to their parents. And I want them to win at being basketball players. So that'll be kind of our first. Numbers-wise, let's just win more than we lose. But we want to definitely get a year up on the wall for the league champion sooner rather than later.
It's really interesting to say that, just because I know, there's a lot of big name coaches out there that are starting to use the term student citizen rather than student athlete. I think Nick Saban's one of the big ones in the charge of, look, if you're a good man who takes care of what he does, goes out there and puts out an effort, football is going to be a success. In this case, basketball is going to be a success. So it's really interesting to hear you say that.
I couldn't leave here without talking about a little bit of football. I know you guys are working towards next year. You're losing, I think, a couple linemen, your quarterback, but I'm sure Xavier Nix is going to come in and not skip a beat where Cameron Davis was. I know that Andrew Jones, raved about his ability to throw the ball and just his coachability. But, watching Lompoc football, I know that Xavier Nix has that athleticism that you've seen the last few years with the Lompoc quarterback. But, of course, obviously the most important, or I say two pieces. We'll start with Shamar Savage. Not just as a special teams threat, but as a wide receiver threat. And obviously the gentleman who's had probably, 12 to 13 offers at this point, Toa Taua. Mm-hmm. How does going forward into next football season look from a defensive standpoint where you're on that side of the ball?
We feel like we have a lot of weapons on defense. I know weapons is usually a term used for offense, but we feel like we have some guys that we can kind of play some games with and really confuse some quarterbacks and some offenses, hopefully even some offensive coordinators. So we're going to try and mix it up a little bit that way. I think that kind of just like basketball, just their athleticism, I truly feel like we got some of the best athletes in the area walking around our campus. And so we're going to try and put them in positions where they can be successful. We're super excited for the year. Almost our entire defense is returning. We got some holes to fill on offense, but almost everybody returns on defense. So should be pretty strong.
I know you'll miss Isaac Black and you'll miss Trenton Carter, but I know that a lot of your defensive backs, from linebackers of Ruben, Cortez, and Toa Taua, you have, Dallas Canley's coming back next year.
Yep. And
so it's you got a lot of these big names that are going to be coming back and being on the cusp of a championship game from last year. I'm sure, you guys are going to do probably just as well this upcoming year. Anything different from out this year that last year that really stands out?
No, we just barely got all the guys together for about the last 3 days of practice. And then, unfortunately, that was the end of our spring period because of baseball and track and some other things. So really this was about seeing the young guys and who we think, obviously without pads, but who we think is going to be able to step in and maybe add some depth. That's the biggest thing because, the next guy is always one play away. So I think we were lacking a little bit in depth last year. And so I think that's going to be a focus, is just creating, early in the season we might get some guys on the field that normally wouldn't have been in the past, because now that we've had that experience, it's got to be a learning point for us that, once we had some guys go down, we struggled a little bit. yeah, we still made the semis, but games didn't really go the way that we wanted them to, and so we just got to have the next man up mentality that we know that they're ready to go and not hoping they're ready to go, I guess.
And not to throw any nepotism out there, but Ryan Morgan, he came in and played as a freshman in the postseason and got a little bit of play in those first 2 games. What kind of role do you think he'll have coming in? Because he's a big body. He's 6'4", about 190 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where he's at right now. But where do you see his role on the football team this upcoming year?
I think he's another guy that brings a lot of athleticism, so we can kind of stick him in wherever it's going to help the team. I know that he's 100% a team guy, and he'll do whatever any of the coaches ask. Super proud of what he's done this year, and hopefully he can continue growing the next 3 years the way he did this year. Defensively, he can step in the backfield and kind of give some of those guys a blow that go both ways. Offensively, he can go run a route, maybe be a mismatch at tight end, in the passing game. Hopefully he can be physical enough to block at the same time. But, yeah, he can do a lot of things. And, of course, special teams, we'll try and get him involved there and see what he can do.
I mean, something that I think that you're in the best position as far as Lompoc goes is the fact that you say, it could be a play away before the next guy gets in. Lompoc's probably the only team on the Central Coast that you can also say you're only a couple scores away from the next guy in. What kind of effect is being able to bring extra guys in? I mean, like we've already seen Xavier Nix play. We've seen a lot of these backups play. How's that affecting you when it comes to your off-season planning?
I think, like I said, it just goes to that setting that depth chart about who's going to be that next guy if we need him. One of the tough parts with that is we feel like our guys kind of aren't in 4-quarter game shape when the playoffs come around. So it's tough to find that balance. We still want to respect our opponent, but we also have to prepare our guys for the playoffs. In the offseason, it's not changing much. Like I said, with a lot of the guys doing other sports right now, we're able to see the last 3 weeks to see all the young freshmen and sophomores that are coming up, what they bring to the table. And once we get back into it in July, we'll be able to see them with pads on or in August, but we'll be able to see them with pads on and really get a better evaluation about who can handle varsity football.
As a coach, you're always just looking to the next game. Right now for you, that's, Aurora Grande High School. They've got a brand new head coach. Do you have any kind of apprehension as far as, you might not know exactly what they're bringing this time around?
Not too much. Coach Hartman's been at AG for a few years now, and, he was at St. Joe's before, so it's not somebody we've never seen. We kind of know what kind of football he likes to play. And Aurora Grande is going to be Aurora Grande. I would imagine that the people in charge, they picked a guy that's going to continue the tradition that they've had set since, I don't even know, the early 70s or late 80s when AG really came on strong. So I think it's just going to still be Aurora Grande. Just like coaches are rotated here at Lompoc, it's always kind of somebody that carries on the tradition of what's been successful.
You mentioned, rotating the coaches and everything else. Now St. Joe just put in an interim coach of Jim Chavala. What do you know? I mean, he's a defensive coach as well as you are, and he's moving into the interim head coach for this next season for St. Joe. Do you see that sort of same effect with AG, that just sort of plug and play? You know what their defense was. Their defense is going to be the same. Obviously, they're losing CJ Cole to Cal Poly. And they'll hopefully plug and play because CJ's little brother is still going to be there. Like you said, it's the next game, but obviously you look at the season as a whole. Have you or any of the coaching staff reached out to Jim Chavala, congratulate him, have a conversation?
I personally haven't. I'm sure Andrew's probably talked to him. I think that it's going to be a similar situation that he's going to carry on because they always have great football players at St. Joseph. And they're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. And then they always have some guys with some speed that can get around the outside or over the top of you. So I imagine he's going to continue doing what's helped them be successful. Being a defensive coach, he's probably going to keep the defense kind of what it has been. And I think I had saw that he hired an offensive coordinator, but I don't know anything about him. So who knows what they're going to do there. But nice thing is they'll have a few games on film before we see him. So we'll have a pretty
and
good
I'm
idea.
sure that's one of the struggles playing AG every year. I mean, Sawyer Mayer's gone. They have to replace him. But you have no film on these new players and what their abilities may or may not be. Mm-hmm. So it's always fun going to that first game and watching you guys play AG.
Yeah, we get an idea from the summer passing leagues, but I mean that's nothing like the game with pads on, so don't really get too much out of those.
Thank you for joining the show. We really appreciate it. Congratulations again on the head coaching job for the boys basketball team, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of you this season as we'll be broadcasting a lot of not just football but basketball games as well.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right,
Go Braves.
Thank you, Coach.
Stephen, those were two really good interviews. One thing I want to touch on with Jim Allen is he actually won't be returning as the Lompoc baseball coach next season. He leaves a legacy there of 16 years. He's made the postseason 15 times, which is pretty incredible. I mean, when you think of high school sports and making the postseason, whether winning the league or at least finishing in the top four, near like 92%. So it's something that I think it'll be tough for Lompoc to find a coach moving forward that is as successful. I wish them luck, but moving forward, I hope Jim Allen can find a position somewhere. Hopefully at the next level, he'll be able to use his talents as a coach.
Well, when we talked to Coach Allen a little bit, off the microphones, and he said that it's real easy to look back on my legacy and feel good because I can look up into the rafters and see the number of years I led league champions, and that really, made him feel like he's not leaving in shame. He feels real good about his decisions.
Yeah, and he took over for Dan Bodery, who had been there since the late 60s. So you're thinking, almost 50 years of coaching, and there's only been 2.
Yeah, and it's really a good sign when you have that long of a stretch, and there's really, 2 coaches during that time. It shows that the culture really is embracing baseball there.
And Don Cross told me, the AD at Lompoc High School, that, this upcoming week they're going to be looking for a replacement. They have a couple candidates. I'm sure the assistants, Larry Jacinto and Kirk Frederick, are probably at the top of that list. They might look outwards like Cabrillo did for their head football position. So other than, like Lompoc with the new boys basketball position, they've hired from within because Paul Terrones already a teacher at the school and an assistant coach in another sport.
Well, and as Paul Terrones said, when you're coming as a new head coach, you look at what's already been successful out of school, and there's nowhere that's going to know it better than people that are already part of that culture.
Talking about cultures, we have 2 different cultures here. We have a basketball culture and a hockey culture
pretty clear
right now in the playoffs, and they're completely different. And most people go over to the basketball culture. I think it's a little more mainstream, although it's not as competitive, at least to this point in the season where we're heading into the finals. And then you have hockey, who is not as popular, and you have mentioned before it's probably because of the TV deals, mismanagement of the entire league as it is, when it comes to marketing to the general public. But it has a much better parity in the sport because you're looking at Nashville, who is the last team, the top. If you rank the 16 teams that make the playoffs from the East to the West, they're number 16, and they're making the finals. And as an 8th seed, I know the LA Kings have done that in the past. I mean, you get that more in hockey than you do basketball because I think in basketball it's top.
I think in the last 10 years, it's happened at least 3 times out of my memory with Nashville, Edmonton, and LA all being 8 seeds that made the Stanley Cup Final. And, I mean, it just makes the games that much more intense because you look, this is also a record number of overtime games in the postseason. I think they're at 28 already through 3 rounds. That means that, a lot of these games coming down to the last play, the last little bit, and there's nothing more exciting in my mind than overtime hockey, especially in Game 7. Yep. I mean, we saw that 2 overtime game, Ottawa versus Pittsburgh, and that was just a phenomenal game all the way through. And, I mean, we were watching. It was evenly matched, and it was just competitive. And I think there's no doubt that the NHL is the more competitive league, and they have superstars. They have all this. So, really, it's weird that it hasn't caught on just because of the fact. And I think part of it is when you talk about golden eras of a sport, it's rarely when you don't know who's going to win. Yep. I mean, right now football is in a golden era. Everyone knows the Patriots are going to be competitive. Yep. I mean, in the 80s, in the NBA, it was, Bird versus Magic, just Lakers, Celtics, year after year. And so now the NBA is coming into another, at least revenue-wise, coming into a lot of interest from outside sources. And so, what do we got now? Warriors, Cavs, Warriors, Cavs, Warriors, Cavs. I mean, I don't see a break to the cycle either.
And, you say Warrior Cavs, but, a lot of the media, when they're mentioning Warriors versus anybody, they're saying LeBron.
Yeah.
And I think it cheapens it a little bit. Obviously, he's the focal point of that team. But you look at the Warriors, I mean, is KD the team? No. Is Curry the team? No. They're much more team-oriented versus as far as an optics portion, because you think of the Warriors, you think of the whole team. You think of Draymond Green. You think of Kevin Durant. You think of Stephen Curry. You think of Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
But when you think of Cleveland, I mean, sure, you can think Kevin Love and you can think Tristan Thompson and you can think Kyrie Irving, but it comes down to LeBron James.
Oh, yeah. And I think that might, part of that's just because that's what's sexy to talk about. I mean, you can talk night and day about, all these former teams. Scottie Pippen is considered one of the best players of all time at his position and what he did, but you're going to talk about Jordan when you're talking about the Bulls. Like, that's just how it goes.
Overshadowed.
Yeah, completely just, no one's going to, if you get a roster that's got 2 autographs on it and there's Steve Kerr and Scottie Pippen, it's not going to go as much as Michael Jordan's autograph on the one roster on the other side. It's just how it goes.
So talking about, the paths to the finals, obviously Golden State swept. They're 12-0 moving into the finals here. Cleveland 12-1 moving to the finals, losing that one game to Boston. I think it was complacency of LeBron James, just not mentally in the game. He finished with 11 points. I watched the first half of the game. I didn't watch the whole game. I watched the first half, and Kevin Love was hot, so he was feeding Kevin Love, and he never really got in a rhythm, and he was just sort of playing facilitator. And by the second half, I mean, he wasn't in rhythm, and he still didn't take that many shots. But they dropped to one game, which realistically was kind of a sweep because they're still getting 6 days of rest.
The fact that that's the one series that a game was lost in is kind of surprising, because that's also the same series where it was 65-14, something like that in game 2, or just an unwatchable mess. I mean, it was awful. And then the final game was another blowout. I mean, the Celtics did not look like they deserved to be on the same court for most of that series, and so they got one game off the Cavaliers somehow, but it felt like that shouldn't have been the case. It almost feels like these two teams should combine for 24-0 going into the finals, just because that Celtics team did not look like a match.
Yeah, and one of the last teams to do that, sort of go into the finals undefeated, were the 2001 Lakers, who at that time the first round was a best of 5, so they were only 11-0 going in, and lost the first game to the 76ers in Allen Iverson, who had 48 points, and it was a spectacular game and shocked the Lakers. But the Lakers went out and won the next 4 games and won the championship. But it's you've never really seen this where two teams are coming in to the finals so early.
Yeah.
That one team has 9 days of rest and one team has 6 days of rest. They're going to be completely rested and healthy, and I think it might be the best thing for the NBA having two teams, because if you look at last year, Stephen Curry kind of got hurt in the previous series, sort of hurting his knee.
Yeah.
He was out. Cleveland was healthy. But this year, the only unhealthy part of, I think, both teams is Steve Kerr and the coach, which may make a difference, come crunch time in one of these games.
I mean, I think the on-the-court presence of the coach is less important in the NBA. I mean, the players kind of know what they're doing. That they're literally professional players. That's the name of the game. I mean, they know how to win what they do, and so I feel like this series would be really interesting. I mean, it is interesting, but purely just because last year, if the Cavs had finished in 5 games, would this be an interesting series at all right now? If the Cavaliers weren't the defending champs and that series got closed out last year, would anyone even be tuning in? Because it looked like the Warriors were going to clean sweep the Cavs early on last year, and then it was 3-1, and the Cavaliers came back and won it. So.
Well, between Draymond Green getting suspended in that game, and it's tough. I mean, teams that make it this far are healthy. Both teams are extremely healthy at this point, and it should be a great series. But why don't you talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup Final and what should we be watching for?
It's
in
almost
that series?
vaudeville because you've got a clear underdog hero going up against, like, essentially, if these were cartoon characters, the Pittsburgh Penguins would be coming in as the mad robber baron, twirling their mustache. Here comes another Stanley Cup, ha 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 ha, you know. And so everyone's cheering for Nashville if they're not cheering for Pittsburgh, because there's so many good storylines for Nashville. I mean, Pekka has been so hot. PK Subban, after being kicked off of a team, being told, we have to get rid of him. We can never go to a Stanley Cup final with this player on our team. And now he's on a Nashville Predators team that's going to the finals for the first time in, the team's history. It feels so good for PK Subban, who does so much charity work and is such a great face of the league. And so then you look on the other side and you've got the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are there again. And, it's a Sidney Crosby again. And they have two good goalies that are, it feels almost unfair that you have this kind of ragtag group of, underdogs coming as the 8th seed. Winning against the Chicago Blackhawks, only allowing 3 goals in 4 games against the Blackhawks. It's absolutely crazy that Nashville's been able to do what they've done, just beating all of these series that they weren't supposed to have a chance in. And now, again, people are looking at this series saying, they don't got a chance to win this. Pittsburgh's still going to take it. Like, don't get your hopes up, kids. And so it feels impossible to not cheer for Nashville, as they're just kind of the wonder dogs going through this and kind of finding a way with a team full of players that are never going to go win a Stanley Cup and, are good but not that great, against this team that's completely the opposite. That's got Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, Phil Kessel, and just a team that can't seem to lose. So I think that's a great Stanley Cup Finals matchup, and it's not the most marketable as far as market share. You've got Nashville, which isn't that big, Pittsburgh, that's not that big, but we'll see. I think it's going to be a really good series. I'm really upset that every single game starts at 5 p.m. Pacific, because it means I have to rush off of work every day, but we'll see how it goes.
I know hopefully you'll be able to get home in time to, at least for the Nashville Predator games, watch the national anthem by one of their plethora of country stars.
It's kind of crazy that's one of the big storylines going in, is who's going to sing the national anthem at the game, because I'd put money down. If we're doing the Charles Bucks again, I'll put money down one of them is going to be Carrie Underwood.
Oh, yes.
Keith Urban's already sang.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know who else they're going to get. There's probably going to be a Jason Aldean appearance at some point. It's Nashville, so they're going to get whoever's in town at the day. The only one that's for sure is Carrie Underwood, because if you don't watch hockey, Mike Fisher is the captain of the Nashville Predators. He's married to Carrie Underwood, who's a famous country person.
I think if you don't know who Carrie Underwood, you literally live under wood.
It's better than a rock. It's more comfortable. Technically, we all live under wood, Charles. What do you think houses are made of? Think about it.
Brick?
Think about it.
Brick and mortar?
Man, you have a better house than I do, apparently. I got like a sheet of stucco. That's it. Just keep it suspended with twine.
Well, I'm sure both series will be fun to watch. I'm going to try to catch probably hopefully all 14 games. I hope they both go 7 games. Any predictions?
I'm gonna say Nashville in 7. I think we're gonna see PK Subban lift the cup on unfriendly ice, and I'm gonna think I don't think that it's gonna be as good on the other side. I think the Warriors are gonna win in 5.
Okay, so I'm gonna pick Pittsburgh because
you're logical. You're not thinking with your heart here.
Now that I'm married into the Freeze family, some of my in-laws are Pittsburgh Penguins fans, so I'm going to side with them. I'm going to go 6, and I'm going to say Warriors in 6.
You like cheer for the Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid, don't you? Just you want to see the world, like, oh yeah, sure, why not? Let's see the kids not get the money they need to save the snow resort. Let's watch Airbud. Airbud's a dog. He shouldn't be on the court. There's rules that say that a dog can't play basketball. Get him out of there.
All right. So that'll end it for us, and we appreciate you listening to the podcast, and stay tuned for more. Have a nice day.